Hey everybody, happy Monday. Hope you're doing well. Obviously, we're excited. We're in new digs and making a few changes cosmetically to the show. Hope you like it so far. It has so much potential. A few of you have written in privately and said, I wonder why you didn't just wait to kind of build it all out and then go. And that's just not my style. Usually, when I have a goal, just like I recommend to all of you, you start going after it right away. Now, you could sit there and color the walls and hang stuff up in the back and get a backdrop and all this and that. But at the end of the day, it's kind of like having kids. You're never going to be ready, right? So you kind of have to jump in, pray a lot, hope for the best, and then go for it. So that's the way I look at this is like we're going to be, it's always an ongoing, never finished kind of situation. We'll always be making improvements and this and that to the physical space. The key thing though is that we get to be in the same room and talk about stuff, so the energy is different. Heretofore, long time watchers and fans have noticed we were doing it on Zoom, which is certainly practical, but the quality that you get at the end is all not that great. And you can't put lipstick on the pig, so to speak. So the Zoom file is not really great quality when all said and done. Yes, it's two camera sorta. The iSight camera is convenient, but it's not a great camera. This one's a 4K camera. This was probably actually one of the two that we have for the office. We also have SLR and we have some other video cameras that we're considering, but these are probably good enough for what we need right now. And then the space will evolve. We're kind of building it out as we speak, but we like to just not fuss about the smaller details because they'll all fall into place. And on a practical note too, you're not watching the show because of the cosmetics, right? You're watching it for the insight and the wisdom and all this and that. And so we are going to make it available. Another thing is, and I've been thinking about this, I know a lot of the folks who are watching have questions. They make their comments. They have questions. Some of them go through the YouTube platform. Some of them contact me directly. One of the things that I've been thinking about is maybe doing something where if you have a question and you'd like it answered, maybe have you on the show as a guest for like, say, 15 minutes or something like that. I'm toying with the idea. I don't want to get into teaching how to trade for the most part. I think that's kind of just such a complete bore. But if there's a mental thing that you're going through and you need insight on it, we're toying with the idea that we might have a guest on. It won't be live, right? Because this way we can edit out any flubs or any things that you might think about that afterwards you'd like to take back or redo or something like that. So it's probably not going to be a live show. It's awfully hard to do live shows because then if things break down in the middle of the show and you need a big squad to kind of troubleshoot stuff, and we don't have anybody, we can't expect someone to sit there at YouTube and help us in the middle of stuff that way too. So if it's local, no problem, because if the hardware or the software has a glitch, we can normally fix it or get someone on the phone real quick. We haven't even had any issues, to be honest with you, but just doing stuff live is fantastically difficult because anything can happen, and then you have an audience sitting there going, okay, what's next? And you can't, bang it out. So, you'd want to have to feel comfortable appearing on camera, talking about your issues. You don't have to necessarily use your full name, but you'll have to use, your birth name, not like Sniper Trader ES Mini Killer, Johnny Holmes. Like, I'm not interested in that. You have to be a real person, not a caricature. And so, subscribers who have gotten the audiobook and who would consider themselves subscribers to the email list will be the first folks to hear out about that, most likely as I put some more thought into it. I don't think it's going to be terribly difficult to do, but I can only help you to the extent that you're willing to open up and talk about what it is that's ailing you or holding you back from otherwise making some money or making more money for what it is that you're doing. I think that would be kind of cool to have a conversation on that because, as you know, in this show, all I did in the book was talk about my failures, right? So it's not going to be humiliating or embarrassing. It's more going to be about, you know, helping you get new insight on your own behavior, and then going back to the drawing board and then putting it into practice. Certainly want to keep touching upon the uncertainty of everything, right? You want to be right on things. People want to be accurate. You need a certain degree of accuracy, but you don't have to be accurate like you would have to be a student if you were looking to graduate and be a valedictorian, a salutatorian, or a graduate summa cum laude, for example. You just need to have a relative degree of accuracy and then learn to live with the uncertainty. That's part of the risk. It's not just the monetary risk. The emotional part is, how do you deal with the uncertainty, right? And on last week's show, or a show coming up with Ganja, because we recorded a couple of them, I remember reading and talking to a lot of, because people send the emails, and I read them over many, many times before I respond, because I want to get my arms around stuff. Plus, I also try to have to decipher, what are they actually inferring about their issues, right? So at the end of the day, I realize that there are some folks who deliberately sabotage their own trading, right, by taking consistent small losses and consistent small gains and kind of treading water. And this goes on for years because they really don't need the money, right? They earn that through their job, but they deliberately sabotage what they're doing and stunt their own growth because that's predictable and it gives them a sense of control in an otherwise very uncomfortable spot for some people, which is you can't predict the outcome of a trade. You can do your position sizing. You can have all the fundamental reasons. You can be a discretionary chart reader. You can even be purely systematized. But although that's dysfunctional, right, on some level, it's a predictable environment to be in, right? And that kind of gives people, in a very weird way, a sense of comfort, right? Whereas if you let it go and kind of feel your feelings but sit on your hands and not do any lasting damage to your portfolio, you'll be surprised that if you're in good trades and the trends take off, which you can't guess, you can't predict, you'll be surprised to think how much money you could possibly make if you just stay out of your own way. That's why many people, even in the Market Wizards books, had said to, learn to sit on your hands because that's where the money is. It happens overnight. It happens over the week. You have an illusion that you're in more control than you actually are during the day, not realizing that anything could happen, from the most extreme situation where you have some kind of medical emergency and you can't offset your trade by the end of the day, to a 9/11 type of black swan event that happens that sends the market strongly against what your position is. And those markets can jump a lot faster than you can react. And when they act fast, the moves tend to be gigantic against you. And if you're using points or R, you can have a 10R event against you before you have a chance to operate. Now, I got an email from a client who just finished working on the coaching program, and I'm going to read it. I'm not going to read you the email because that would betray the guy's trust. Let me call it. I'm in the other email box. Hang on. Oh, hang on. Sorry. I got it. Well, the subject of the email anyway was, thanks for the trailing stops. And, I'm not going to say anything more because, again, I love the guy and I don't want to betray his trust. The idea being that if you look at how soft the markets are, the markets have been moving down, especially if you're in technology. And so when you put your stops in, you draw the line in the sand, you say, okay, I'm willing to stay in the trade up until this point, then I'm going to get knocked out. And I'm not going to negotiate with myself. When you do that, in the moment, you might have strong feelings. Like when someone that you're dating decides that they don't want to date you anymore. You might take it as that type of an affront. That those feelings can certainly be in a similar neighborhood. But then what ends up happening is you look back a week or two later. And I still do this to this day. You start to look and you see, okay, my goodness, my exit on that trade wasn't the best exit given all the prices that we can see, but for where I got out and where I was unwilling to stay with that trade, where I was willing to transfer the risk to somebody else at my stop price, I have a superior exit compared to where the prices are today, right? Because then if you invite that into your process where you're like, I'm going to renegotiate my stops and let the names continue to work against me, One, it says to me on the 30,000 foot view, you don't have a very clear goal about what it is that you're doing, and that looks amateurish. Hate to say it to you, but that's the first thing an allocator is going to look at. And if you were going to hire yourself, how would you feel about that behavior if you were judging somebody on a scale of 1 to 10 of acting like a pro? Because even if you don't want to go pro, as I said a million times before, you still have to exhibit the behaviors that pros do if you want to make money doing this, which I presume is part of the case, because it might not be the money, but it's going to be what you can get with the money, the liberty, maybe the passive income. Maybe you want to buy industrial real estate. Maybe you want to buy art. Doesn't matter to me what it is, because it's all legit. But there's usually something with that money that it's going to do for you that's going to improve your life, not just necessarily having the money, because the money is, well, who cares, right? So when you look at that, now you've put yourself in a place of strength, actually, by offsetting that and having good boundaries, right? Do you have good boundaries in your life? Because if you don't have good boundaries in your life, I'm not saying that it's a direct correlation, but you might have trouble sticking to putting your stops in. Do you let people talk to you any one particular way? Do you not stick up for yourself when people cross boundaries in your personal life or in your relationships? I'm not saying you have to walk around cracking everyone over the head or putting people in their place, but it's a healthy thing. No means no, right? It's not a bad thing. It helps people understand where the boundaries are. And that's an important part of life, because you have all different types of relationships, and people need to know where are the boundaries in their behavior with you. You need to know your behavior with people too. So I like the unbridled aspect of letting your profits run wild, but I think many of you that I've heard from are actually afraid of that. And I would ask you to look at that. Like, why are you afraid? Are you afraid? Are you worthy of the money that you seek? Or do you kind of bullshit yourself into thinking that you actually want trading gains, but when you're really, really comfortable, not doing anything? I worked with a guy, I'm not even going to say what country he's from, but his whole goal in life was to complain about how the markets were manipulated. And I shouldn't say I worked with him. We talked about working together, but at the end, he was unwilling to let go of his core belief that the markets were manipulated by everybody under the sun: the institutional investors, market makers, the federal government, and then a whole bunch of other boogeymen. So when he would put on a trade, he would, buy the SPY, buy a married put, and sell a call on top of it, so that there was really no way for him to kind of make any money. But it allowed him to be in the market, have a trade on, right? With virtually, there was no way to make money. The P&L on the thing was always, the expected value was basically zero, right? So at the end of the day, it occurred to me that his whole goal was just being able to have a position on, which was legitimate. He had the position on, but it couldn't go anywhere. It couldn't work against him, and it couldn't really make him any money, but it gave him a platform where he could bitch and bellyache about how the whole world was basically conspiring to kill him. And I was like, well, are you willing to look at that and to look at the moving pieces to kind of see? And I didn't get a definitive yes. So we couldn't move forward because, again, it's like talking to someone about their drinking. Until they have the willingness to stop drinking alcohol, interventions, it's good for the people. It's cathartic for the people to get stuff off their chest for sure. But I don't know what kind of impact it actually makes on a bigger sample space. Sometimes the people hear the message loud and clear. Other times they go, yeah, you're right, I should stop drinking. And then they go home and drink a fifth of Proper 12 from your man Conor McGregor. So that's that. I want you to embrace the uncertainty and start to feel comfortable with that, because that's really where the money's at, is embracing the uncertainty. I want to talk about that more and where it showed up in my life earlier in my trading, where it shows up now and how I deal with it, because I think that's the key. Not just knowing what to do if you're an intraday day trader, right? I guess that's redundant. Swing trading. It's all kind of like a blur to me. I kind of look at it all similarly. I know the risk profiles are a little bit different. But again, I have the data. I've studied the numbers. And you might not feel comfortable with what I say because it runs afoul of your belief system. But I'm not calling your girlfriend ugly here. I'm just trying to get you to think. And I'm not challenging you. I'm not even saying that you're not successful. That's not the point. We're just having an ongoing dialogue here about the differences between us and how we can all do well in and around those differences, but without having judgment. I know I've said certain things in the past, so I want to be clear about it, in that if you're a brand new person, I think the odds are better in your favor to make it managing risk if you look longer term than trying to figure out the 45 ways that you could do something within the day. You see? Because the emails that I get are from the biggest percentage, if I create a pie chart of people who are struggling, have failed out, or have currently wouldn't consider themselves to have made it, the majority of them are struggling from dealing with the short-term stuff. And the reason is because the markets can move very quickly for no particular reason. Certainly nothing necessarily fundamental. And so your timing, your sense of timing, which you can develop, is really key. And I think people kind of have it or they don't. Some people can develop it, but a lot don't. And hopefully they can hear the message before they lose all their capital, and kind of go from there. Anyway, I will look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Okay, everybody, thanks for being here. Please take a minute, like and subscribe to the show. You could also leave a comment. I don't have all the answers, so it's good to get some feedback. Also, if you would like to support the show, check out the links below. You can get the free audiobook of The Inner Voice of Trading, and also information about the course that I teach with Victor Sperandio. Thanks for being here, folks. I'll see you tomorrow.